Something I'd really like to have on this van is cruise control. The steering wheel has cruise buttons, but they don't work, and the previous owner mentioned something about him thinking it was related to a fuse. I think the clock spring on the steering wheel is broken because the horn's not working either, so I'm going to go ahead and swap the steering wheel and clock spring for the ones from the parts van that hopefully has the 6-wire harness that will be cruise compatible. But there's another issue, and I'll show you what that is here. So on a lot of the Ford trucks and vans, on the brake master cylinder, there is a switch that's located right here that kills the cruise control if there's an increase in brake pressure. It's a secondary switch, and it was a fire hazard and actually got recalled on a lot of the vehicles because it would leak brake fluid into it, and brake fluid is highly flammable, and with a 12-volt ignition source it would catch fire. So the fix was they put big honking fuses on either end of it and called it good. This cylinder doesn't have that switch. Here's the master cylinder from the parts van that I bought, which does have the kill switch. I didn't end up needing this because my 2002 doesn't have the switch, but it does have the wiring for it. So I've got the degas container all disconnected here, and as you can see, maybe, so this right here coming out above the master cylinder is the wiring that would go to that switch. And the previous owner, or one of the previous owners, has already done some modification here, and I would say they did a reasonably good job of it. What they've done is taken the red and green, so these two, and what you can do is just twist these together, and that will be an always on, and that will fool the system into thinking that there's a brake switch. The previous owner did one step better and ran these actually through the firewall and under the dash down here. And so those wires actually come all the way down to this switch on the brake pedal. So when you release brake pressure, it opens the switch, and that should be a secondary release for the cruise control. So the only thing I've got to do is take off this steering wheel with the busted buttons and replace the clock spring, and hopefully that'll give me cruise control and a horn again. Here's the steering wheel and clock spring that's going to go in, and now I screwed up and I let the clock spring open up so you can see what this looks like. It's actually just an electrical cable, and this clock spring here is in fact the 6-wire clock spring that should be compatible with cruise control. And so I just need to re-center this. Basically you put it all together, turn it all the way to one side, and then untwist it 3 turns. I've never done this before, but that's my understanding, so I'll do that before I click it in. But first, got to remove the old steering wheel. There's no great mystery to removing the steering wheel. Basically, you come in and open some of these covers, unscrew everything. It's a couple of Torx bits and screw bits, Phillips head screwdriver bits. And then to remove the lock cylinder, you got to put the key in, turn it halfway, and then there's a little hole underneath that you put an awl up into. There are other videos on YouTube showing how to do that. I'll link to. I'm just going to pop it off, show you what I got. Okay, I've got the airbag unbolted, and now I'm going to disconnect the wiring to it here and here, and that'll let me pull this off, and then I'll be able to remove the steering wheel, hopefully without exploding this clock spring as well. Alright, got that unclipped. I unclipped these 3 pins here. This one can stay, and then I'm going to have to remove this. It's a big Torx bit. That pulls off, and then I'll just rock the steering wheel back and forth until it pops loose. Alright, I got the lower cover removed. It's just 3 Phillips screws from underneath. You've got to unscrew the adjustment lever from here just by hand to get that off. And then popping the cylinder out, the lock cylinder, you just put your key in, and then there's this little hole right here, and that's going to hit this bump, and that releases the lock cylinder so you can just wiggle it on out. So now I'm set to remove the clock spring, and that should be just with the 2 little clips right in there. I just checked my old clock spring and the older but going in clock spring with the multimeter set on resistance, so I'm looking for ohms. And these pins right here, the 2 in the middle, I got no connectivity to the plug on the far end on the old one, and then the one that's going in, I got very slight resistance on each of those. So I'm reasonably confident that my problem was a broken connector in the clock spring, and the new one should solve that. So hopefully that'll fix it. If not, I'll order a new one and put that one in. Okay, so I am going to rewind this clock spring. So I've got it all coiled back up into its housing really nicely here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install the spring outer body in its housing here so that it can't move on me while I am rewinding it. So that just presses on like that. And now I've got the tabs inside released. If I pushed this on, it would be tight in there. But then if I turned the wheel to the left, it would break the clock spring because it would overwind. So what I'm going to do to rewind that, and this is just per some instructions that I found online, is I'm going to get this centered over the spindle. Let's got to put a little extra in there so it centers. There we go. Okay. So now I can turn this to the left clockwise until I run out of cable. And so there, you can feel that snugging up. And I can actually see that it's getting tighter. And so now I've got gentle resistance because I'm out of cable. So there's an indicator right here that says top, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin this 3 times clockwise to center it. So we'll go around 1. Just once. Twice. And there's 3 times. We'll put the top on the top and click that into place. Hopefully we're good. Now I'm just going to hook up these wiring connectors that I disconnected on the back. And with any luck, we've got a horn. I'm dying to fire it up and see if it works. Well, I got it all back together, and I still have no horn. So my problem is something else, but there you go. That's how to replace the steering wheel and rewind a clock spring. Oh well. Well, here's a small win. So I opened the battery box, and this relay right here is the one for the horn. And what I did is I went ahead and pulled that one and swapped a different one in. And with the different one in, guess what? The horn works. So small win there, and I'm just gonna go get a replacement for this relay. The last piece of the puzzle in terms of getting the cruise control working was making sure that this switch actually stays shut when I am not hitting the brake. So I just had to bend that down a little bit so that that switch doesn't open up when I'm not on the brake. And as soon as I did that with the new clock spring, the cruise control worked. So the new steering wheel in place, the buttons are working, and cruise works, which is really awesome. It's the factory integration, and I couldn't be happier about that. The new steering wheel, the lights don't work in the cruise switches, which is a little difficult at night, so I'll probably switch those at some point in the future. But in the meantime, pretty happy. As always, thanks for watching. Hope you like and subscribe.